Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the time here together and the warmth of the building, Lord, in this cold winter morning. We just ask that you would bless our time of study here this morning. We thank you for all the blessings you bestowed upon us, and we are grateful for who you are and what you've done. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, we've kind of been, we're down about to chapter 3 of the book of Ruth, I think. It's kind of where we're kind of sitting here, and remember right, Ruth has gleaned in the field of Boaz there, and he's been very kind to her and looks after her and makes sure she's not bothered, she's protected under his care, really. Kind of informally there, and he tells her to stay right with the maidens that's working for him and his harvesters, and to keep right on working and gleaning in his fields through the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. And when she goes home to Naomi, Naomi is overjoyed, really, that she's come to work in Boaz's field. She sees it as the providential hand of God here in their distress. And so verse 23, the last verse of chapter 2 says, "So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law." So that brings us to chapter 3. And verse 1 says, "Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And thou hast not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast. Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor." Now, this is the end of the barley harvest and of the wheat harvest. Remember, the barley harvest comes first. It's the first of the harvest season. This would be, they showed up back in, they came back from Moab, and they got there right at the beginning of the barley harvest, which would be the 1st of April, maybe the last of March. And the wheat harvest would be 6 weeks or so, maybe probably more after that, last of May, 1st of June, probably last of May type of time here. So I have read, some people think that this is a full year after they had arrived. They'd stayed there a full year. This would be the second harvest. I don't think so at all. The only reason I can think that they might think this is because it says that Boaz is winnowing barley on the threshing floor. So they assume that they went through the first harvest and everything, and then it's this barley harvest of the second season. I don't think so at all. Now the threshing floor, everybody knows what a threshing floor is. This would have been a very smooth floor. Now remember Bethlehem sets up on the ridge, on the limestone ridge, about 5 miles south of Jerusalem. It's up here on the limestone ridge, which all this ridge runs north and south on the west side of the Jordan Valley here. So it's up in what sometimes called the mountains, but we call it a high rocky ridge. And then the farmland would have been down lower to the east, down towards the valley. It had been down in the valley there. And Bethlehem does have a nice fertile farmland area down in there, which has been where Boaz's field was. Now the threshing floor would have been back up closer to town there. I don't know if it was right up on the ridge or if it was back down off the ridge to the east here a little bit. But it would have been a place where, and I'm sure on this threshing floor, would have been a limestone, a fairly large limestone area, flat, smooth, and probably been worked on by the Israelites to smooth it out. So it was a good place to work. And this is where they would have brought their harvest. Where they would have brought their wheat, they would have brought their barley bundles and sheaves, and then they would have spread them out on this floor, and they would either have beat them manually with flails, with sticks, or else they'd have drove the oxen around on it to thresh the grain out, and then they would have raked the straw off, and then afterward you'd have the chaff and the grain and everything, and then they would have winnowed that or cleaned that, and this would have been done in the evening and on into the night when the winds. Every evening the wind would pick up, because I mean you got a semi-arid at least climate here, and it cools, that type of climate, that type of landscape cools down fast, and it creates wind currents. And you got the elevation here and everything, and the wind would have come down that ridge and come down the slope there, and it was a good time to clean the grain. And they would have had like a winnowing fork, and they would have taken that and threw the grain and the chaff up in the air, and the wind would carry the chaff downwind, and then the grain, of course, would fall, the heavier grain would fall right there. And when they got it cleaned enough, they would sweep all this up, all the grain up, sack it up, and take it home with them, and put it in the barns or their granaries or even in their homes. And for longer term storage, they would probably put it in large clay pottery containers, hold quite a bit, and then they would seal them up and keep it sealed from insects and rodents. And in later years here, in later years now, excavations have uncovered some of these grain storage pottery containers, still full of grain, 3,000 years old, that would have been stored in cities that had been attacked and destroyed and burned usually, but the grain usually was down in some place where the fire really didn't bother, and they've uncovered this, and here it is. This is what they would have done at this time. So
not every farmer had his own threshing floor. It's like a co-op.
right, there's a point.
Okay.
Not everybody could thresh and clean their grain the same day. I think they would have had to wait their turn. Whether this was a community floor, I assume it probably is, or it could have possibly been even Boaz's own floor, but everybody would have used it. And there could have been more than one floor around Bethlehem, but I wonder, because it's you'd have to have the right location and a lot of work to make this, because you wanted it nice and smooth, and
so how big would one be?
fairly good. They could vary.
Like
But if
as big
this,
as the church? That would be big.
I mean, like a personal one could be pretty small, like maybe this size of this room, maybe not much bigger, but I think this one would be quite a lot bigger. And I've seen pictures of some, because I mean, this was not just used in Palestine, this was used everywhere throughout the world until machinery came into being in the 1800s, really. I mean, it's until pretty recent times when you look at world history. But I'd say they could have been 100 feet across, on a big, like a community threshing floor, and maybe you could have more than one person working at one time on his crop. But anyway, I think they would have brought their harvest and stacked it. Maybe they could have left it in the field in a drier climate, but they could have also brought it up from the field and stacked it here around the threshing floor until their turn came to use it. 100 years ago, my grandparents' time, I know my grandparents talked about threshing out of the stack instead of threshing out of the field, because there wasn't enough machines yet at that time. They would thresh in the summertime, out of the field until fall, and then what they didn't get done, they would haul in and make a huge stack in the barnyard, and then they would go ahead and do their fall work, harvest the corn, shuck the corn, get it in the crib, work cattle, do some fall plowing if they was doing that, get get some wood cut, do all this stuff. And then along about after the first year, then they'd fire up and they'd thrash all winter out of the stack. They'd pull the machine up the stack and they'd thrash out of the stack. And of course, this is with steam engines, and weather like this, you had to keep the steamer going day and night to keep it from freezing up. And how they did this, I assume they just asked Google, how do I keep my steamer from freezing when it's 15 below tonight? I assume that's what they did. But anyway, they had things to think about in them days too. I'm assuming here is what is going on. They've stacked the grain, and it's Boaz's turn to thresh and winnow his grain. I'm also assuming he's done the wheat first, because the wheat is a more valuable crop. And I'm assuming he would probably, even though the barley harvest was first, this is after the wheat harvest, as we see in verse 23 of chapter 2, he would probably do his wheat first. Now he's working on his barley. That's my assumption. I don't know that, but so anyway, we know that this night that Boaz is at the threshing floor, and he's working on his barley harvest here, threshing and winnowing it here. And you could thresh basically all day long, but the evening time and on into the night was when you winnowed it, when you cleaned it, because that's when the winds. Every evening the winds would pick up and come through there. And they might also try to situate, if they could possibly, their threshing floor where a natural, maybe a better wind current would come through there, but the lay of the land and everything, they would watch for that too, because that was important for the cleaning. So Naomi knows that Boaz is cleaning his grain down here on the threshing floor tonight. Now, this has been going on. This is probably later June, I'd guess, by this time. The harvest is done in the field. They're done cutting the grain, and everybody's working on it. So I'm guessing we're into probably later June when he's working on this. So, nothing's really actually happened between Boaz and Ruth at this time. And Naomi is a wise old woman here. And she knows that guys are a little slow on the uptake. And so she rightly concludes that this is going to necessitate a little judicious feminine meddling. So what'd she do? What did she do?
Tells Ruth what to do.
Well, what'd she tell her what to do?
Oh, get all dolled up and then wait until they're done eating and drinking. Then go make your move.
Okay. So that's how this is going to work. There's one thing that Naomi seems to understand. We got our three principal characters here. We have Naomi and Boaz and Ruth. There's one thing that Naomi seems to understand that really Boaz and Ruth are not really too much aware of, and that is that the time of redemption does not go on forever. This opportunity is not going to be here forever. And Boaz and Ruth, they're just kind of going along, kind of not making any move here. But Naomi, of the three, she understands this opportunity will not be here forever. And that's the way it is with redemption. The church age is not going to last forever. It's going to come to an end. And the time of redemption has come to an end too. And after that, there's the time of tribulation. It's a time of judgment. And there's also an opportunity for redemption then. That's only 7 years, and that will come to an end. And in our own personal lives, there's a time for redemption. little children run around here, there's a time for redemption for them, but that's gonna come to an end. That will not be forever. And Naomi understands that in her situation here, this opportunity is not gonna last forever. And she takes some action.
So is there a rule how long it does last, or no?
For redemption, I mean,
Yeah,
in this case,
in this case.
no,
Okay.
it's just that Boaz is here, Ruth is here,
Okay,
but after a while, things are gonna change
right, okay.
in this instance.
Uh-huh.
But that is representative of redemption in general,
Right.
our redemption, you know. Under the age of grace, we have, you know, the church age. This is our time of redemption, but it will come to an end. And in the tribulation period, same way. And in a personal life, there's an opportunity here, but it's not going to be here forever. For each and every one of us, as individuals, as families, as a nation, as a church. That opportunity for redemption that God offers is not open-ended as far as time goes. It does come to an end. And even though, and with Ruth and Boaz, I don't think they were thinking of that. But Naomi was, she was looking down the road and said, this is not gonna go on forever unless, if anything's gonna happen, it's gonna have to happen here fairly quickly. Fairly soon, or else things are going to change and opportunity will be lost. So, anyway, Naomi instructs Ruth to get cleaned up and put on her nice clothes and anoint herself a little bit there, so she smells nice, and go down. This will be after dark here now, because he's going to work on into the night here, and he said, she tells him to go down after he has had his supper. He's tired, had a good meal, something to drink, and after he calls it a day and sacks out here, uncover his feet and lay down, and he will tell thee what to do. And Ruth says, okay. So, this is how it happens, isn't it? Okay, that's, Naomi knows what's gonna come to pass, and Ruth is obedient. And okay, so this is outside of town at the threshing floor. They go down, and Ruth watches till Boaz has had supper there, and he turns in for the night. There's a significance, and then she goes quietly and uncovers his feet and lays down. That seems a little strange to us.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, there's quite a bit there. In those days, the hem of Boaz's robe, his coat, would have been embroidered or had a border that was signified his rank in the community, his standing. It would have been, I don't know if it had been embroidered or sewn into it or what, but it would have had a border around the bottom. And in doing this, when she uncovers his feet and then actually brings that over her as she lays down, she is placing herself under his authority, under the authority of his rank, and she is requesting his protection and is submitting to his leadership. That would have been understood at that time. We don't have a clue. This is not totally isolated. Remember when David cut the hem of King Saul's garment off in the cave that night when Saul was asleep. And later, after Saul went out, then David stood up and said, he held it in his hand. There was the evidence. Everybody could have seen the rank. That was Saul's signature, really, the hem of that robe. That would have been a sign that David had submitted to, symbolic that David had submitted to his authority, had not taken his life, but he held Saul's authority in his hand and was willing to submit to that. That would have been significant, that part. Later on, the account of the woman with the issue of blood at Jesus' ministry. Now I'm confident Jesus' robe was plain. I think it was totally unmarked, just like everybody else. He didn't have, but still she reached out and she touched the hem of his garment, and that was indicated that she was willing to submit to his authority and reach out to his rank, even though it wasn't marked on his robe. That would have bore some significance, which is lost upon us. Whenever I kind of think, hem of the garment, like a cuff of your blue jeans. Well, I've had blue heeler puffs just tear my blue jeans to ribbons, and so much for submission to authority. Nothing left but tattered threads by the time they get done. Healing a guy every step you take. But this, in that culture, this would have been very well understood. That robe, the robe, their outer cloak there, would have borne it for somebody with authority in the community, like Boaz would have had. This would have been indicated that she was willing to submit to his authority and was requesting his protection, and really, of course, as a kinsman redeemer. And this kind of ties back in with verse 12 of chapter 2, where Boaz pronounces a blessing upon Ruth. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. Ruth had placed herself under the protection of the wings of the God of Israel, and in like manner she was asking to be placed under protection and care of Boaz as her kinsman redeemer. Okay, how does this play out? Here they are. Boaz is asleep. Here he's tired, and it's night, and he's asleep here at the pile of grain here that he's cleaned, and Ruth snuggles up next to his feet and kind of covers herself up. He's curled up there. This is chilly. I mean, it gets chilly, and this might be in later June here, but it's a dry desert-type climate, and that time of night it gets pretty cool pretty fast. So he's curled up there, and he's in his garment, in his robe there, and she lays down and curls up at his feet. Now what?
That scared him. He's startled.
Okay. Now remember, there's a reason why he stayed there that night. You got to remember, this is the time of the judges. You got Jerusalem 5 miles down the road. That's total Jebusites, pagan people. They're Canaanites, and you have other groups all around like that. This is the time where you had to enforce your own law. You couldn't go to the sheriff. You couldn't go to the king. There was no king. You couldn't go to the magistrates. There wasn't any. You had to take care of yourself. This is the way it was. Now, the Jebusites there, for instance, in Jerusalem, it wouldn't have been too bad an idea just to kind of make a middle of the night run down to Bethlehem and make off with part of the grain harvest. And if you left a dead body or two behind, it wouldn't, nobody'd shed any tears, as long as it wasn't their own. I mean, you know, this is the environment which they lived in. So I've never read it anyplace, and the Bible sure doesn't say it. But I think when Boaz and Ruth woke up startled, I think that they were looking at each other over the blade of Boaz's knife. I really think so. I'm just reading that into it, take it for what it's costing me. But I've read a lot of times in diaries of the Old West and accounts, there's a lot of them old guys that spent a lot of nights with the reins of their saddle horse wrapped around the wrist of one hand and a .44 cap and ball revolver in the other hand. And you did not want to booger them guys in the middle of the night. You just didn't want to do that. Not a good idea. Because they had their two means of survival out there, one in one hand and one in the other. And there was a reason why they did that, because they knew it was a good likelihood they were going to have a little company in the middle of the night. And Boaz was the same way here. There's a reason why he stayed there. He was protecting his harvest. He was guarding it. And there was a good likelihood there could be trouble. And he wakes up in the middle of the night and he knows he's not alone. Well, what's your first thought? We got somebody here that is up to no good. So I think if he had not hesitated a little bit, he would have sliced Ruth wide open. And in the morning, he could have carried her back to Naomi and said things really didn't work out too well. So this is this whole chapter 3 is fraught with risk, different types of risk. That's one risk. I mean, it was physically a dangerous move. And of course, the other risk is to Ruth's reputation, scandalous. If anybody would have seen this, a lot of people are going to think the worst, and tongues are going to wag, and we're going to have stories all over before breakfast is over the next morning. You know, everybody's going to know. So it's a risky move, but Naomi knows if this show's going to get on the road, something's got to happen here. We got to get things going. She understands that, and this is in that time and in that place is very proper. There was nothing scandalous about any of this, and Boaz understands this immediately. He understands this. Now, in verse 9 it says, "And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman." So this is the significance of the hem of that garment, and covering her with that is an indication that he will provide for her and care for her and claim her as a near kinsman, because she is in desperate straits. She's a widow, she's destitute, and there's no future for her other than the provision that God made in his law. Now, Naomi also is using her head here, and she's considering things before she ever outlines this plan. She could have had Ruth approach Boaz in public, but there's a couple problems with that. Nothing wrong with it, but a couple problems is Ruth's a Moabite. And she's, by this time we can see she has a very good reputation, but still she's a Moabite. And this might offend people. I mean, it's perfectly legal, perfectly right, but still she's a Moabite, and she is exercising rights that are provided by the Mosaic law for the Israelites. She's even though she's within her rights, it might just not set well with people. Secondly, if Boaz were to refuse, he would have to refuse openly, and this is not put him in the best light. In Deuteronomy 25, where this is 5 through 10, I think, where this is outlined, if he refused, the widow was entitled to take his sandal off and then spit in his face publicly. So, they didn't need to go there this way. This was private, nobody knew what was going on but those two, and it was very considerate both of Ruth and of Boaz to do it this way. We are out of time, but kind of get the picture. All right. Anything else before we close? We'll try to take up next week there and see how this plays out. Craig, you close.
Father, I just thank you for today. Thank you for just us allowing us to have your word and to be able to read it, to be able to just study it